Okay, now we need to look for some tomes in this giant-ass library. The title of the spire reads The Story of Solarian. Okay. Long, long ago, on the Isle of the North Sea, lived a rugged man by the name of Namkrip. His name is. Namkrip was a student of astrology, and he divined that the flood of the terrifying proportions would soon sweep over the land of Eorzea. So it was that he built a gigantic ship, assembling a crew, and set sail for the appearing realm. So wait, this is basically the reversion of Noah's Ark for Solarian? God damn it. The flood arrived as foretold, and their horror, the strangely jamming waters above the peoples towards the ocean. It was there, however, that Namkrip's crew hauled them aboard his ark. But the danger had yet not passed. A towering wave approached that threatened to smash the vessel to pieces. With only moments to spare, Namkrip wove a mighty spell of teleportation and shifted the entire ship to safety on top Antena's spire. Refugees from the surrounding region hurled here alongside them, but it was not long before the dispute over the dwindling supplies of food led to violence and bloodshed. Saddened by the rite, Namkrip gathered his crew, him and his grateful passengers, and abandoned the ark to those rendered peaks. They journeyed to the coast, where they built a new ship, intended upon returning to the northern seas. They landed on the beach on the isle and set upon that very spot. That sand prospered and grew into the time it became the city of Solarian, where we live to this day. Interesting. What about this one? The title of the spire reads Records of an Old End Colony. Many years ago, on the banks of the Talak in the Devarian hinterlands, a Solarian colony once thrived. This island was originally established as a mere outpost to study the Ethereal Sea in the year 1311 of the 6th Astral Era. Scholars dispatched to Eorzea found the facility wanting, and their demands encouraged a gradual expansion in its structure and services. As rumors spread of a growing community of academics, the era was further endowed with Eorzean students hoping to share in the renowned wisdom of the Solarians. 50 years later, the Forum passed a motion to recognize that had become a flourishing town as an official Solarian colony. A Eorzean resident took to the calling itself Solarian, which led to the small amount of confusion when discussions turned to the subject of the motherland. In response, some Solarian inhabitants, impressed of the name, would simply refer to the Emporium. Following the Great Exodus, however, goblins and treasure hunters claimed for themselves a corner of the abandoned colony and gave it another name, Ireshire. The following chapter go on to introduce the most prominent feature of the Ireshire. This book doesn't appear to contain additional information on the Forum or cover the history of Solarian motherland in greater detail. Okay, that wasn't part of it, so let's go to way over here. Let's try this one over here. Introduction to the Heavens. Have you ever gazed at the skies above and contemplated the mysteries contained therein? I speak of the shifting cloud patterns, but of the vastness beyond, of the sun, and the twinkling tapestries of the night sky. Some think the dome above us is an infinite space. Yet, amongst the leading thinkers of our age, one scholar description of a boundless sea of stars has firmly taken root. Alas, this heavenly sea remains an unchangeable, unknowledgeable destination. There are few indeed who can explain in satisfactory detail why our own star is believed to revolve around the sun. It was the archaeologists of Allegan who came closest to understanding the laws which govern the starry abyss. It was they who launched Talmud and sought to expand beyond the earthly bound existence. Having read their ancient ambitions, I wonder has your intent in this field of study waxed warm? What if I were to tell you that eternal constellations were arranged differently in the distant past, that their positions continue to shift almost imperceptibly by measuring as we journey into the future? It actually makes sense because I don't think things stay in one place forever. Would it shock you to learn that the stars drift further and further apart, and may indeed do so forever? Are you eager to learn more? This book is the wrong subject, yada yada yada, so it's not the right book I'm looking for. Stewards of Wisdom. During the chaos of the 6th Admiral Calamity, Archon Tankshift, founder of the Solarium, bore witness to the madness and savagery of men brought to the brink of despair. Upon raising a settlement on the island in the northern empty, he instructed his people thus: renounce the ways of war and pursue enlightenment through knowledge and reason. The Solarium took to heart the words of their savior, and therefore served as stewards of wisdom. Upon a foundation of accumulated learning, they built a home unlike any other nation born from strength of mind, rather, strength of arms. With knowledge of economics came shrewd trading. With knowledge of agriculture came bountiful crops. Engineering brought wells and sewers, ending squabbles over water. Wealth of experience could be bartered for wealth in coin, and the more the wisdom spreads throughout the world, the more mankind as a whole would thrive. And so it was that no matter trivial and tribulations of the age, the citizens of Scions would live to their founders' teachings. For the sake of the better tomorrow, for the sake of a brighter star, they would eschew the tools of war, and with the knowledge they delivered to the world. Okay, that's one, so I need to find one more, so... How about this one? Way over here. Maybe this one's like the one I'm looking for. The voice of a growing city. In the years which followed the foundation of Solarium, civic policies or other matters of report were decided to the Alicia, a public forum in which every citizen were enlightened to speak. As the city population grew, however, this forum became increasingly impractical. The larger number of participants gave rise to even longer debates, resulting in insufficient delays of vital resolution. Various measures were introduced in an attempt to curtail prolongated discussions, but in the year 2001 of the Astral Era, it was ultimately decreed that Solarium would transition to a new form of governance. The nation would now be led by a body of 99 members, citizens chosen from among their peers, by the means of a nationwide vote. Thus was the form as we know it today, conceived and created. You've gained fundamental understanding of Solarium and following the form, head outside and run it with your companions. Okay. Now I got everything done. Okay. I've read all those books. I've probably bored myself out of it. I stayed like the entire day reading books. So, what's up guys? How was the reading? Sorry, were you waiting long? I don't know, maybe? I wanted to make sure I borrowed at least a few promising volumes. Alphanut and Creo should be along shortly. I was delayed in a similar fashion. As far as I could see, no titles in the Archon stacks mention the final day specifically, so we have no choice but to start with the targetedly validity tomes, if there are even that. At present, the plan is to skim through as quickly as we dare and share our discoveries as we make them. It would be nice to invite everyone to the estate, plenty of comparable places to read, and a reading supply of hot tea. Oh, I was quite fond of the reading outside. But it's not about the little pleasures, isn't it? You missed your home. Well, I can't really blame her. She's been gone from her house or her nation for quite a while, and given the fact that her father disowned her, it's kind of hard going back there after all that. It's been difficult after our arrival. We managed to speak with one of the family servants and asked how things were. It seems our dear father has instructed the staff that even if Alpha and I were to return to Solarian, we were not to be allowed across the threshold. Damn. A harsh measure indeed. I hope that our efforts to understand his position and that of the Four will perhaps lead to a recollection. We made to this rift one day, I'm certain of it. And what of you, G'raha? Have you been to visit your family? Or did you not live here in the city? Well, my situation is somewhat complicated. I was raised in Solarian, yes, but I was born rather further away. In the southern reaches of the Eastern Band, in fact, for generations many people have dwelt in Corvus, a coastal region opposite to the island of Trenevar. Allegan founded a city in that fertile land, and by ship brought in the subjugated tribes of Bikote to serve as laborers. Of course, the massive earthquake of the fourth Ammo calamity brought an end to the Empire's reign, and when the fifth calamity froze the sea solid, many of the tribes still living in Corvus braved the journey back to the origin. My ancestors, however, chose to remain, that they may prevent the remnants of elegant technology from being misused. Isn't Clovis under Guardian rule? For the past 50 years, yes, some semblance of the local culture remains, as is the care for most imperial provinces, but Guardian remained the region of Locrus Amoros. When I was a boy, a nearby town came under the jurisdiction of an illustrious imperial family, the nobles of House Danus. House Danus demonstrated a singular interest in elegant civilization, and so my tribe was forced to consider a plan of action. For some time already, voices has been raised in the favor of abandoning our ancient custom. After all, the elegant eye no longer passes to our eldest children as readily as it once had. Oh yeah, over the generation, it doesn't really pass down that often. Fear of discovery eventually tipped the scales. and the decision was made to bury our ties to the knowledge and traditions of Allegan. As the last child born with the Allegan eyes, I was given over to the custody of a friend in the students of Baldizion who had me registered as a Solarian citizen. I never even considered. Forgive me, it was an unkind question. Even Tankred was taken in by Archon Luis, was he not? Stories of adopted wives and rescued orphans were more common among Solarian than you think, or might think. Yet regardless of our origins, we all are provided with an equal opportunity to learn, and with sufficient perspicacities, we outsiders can even learn the vaulted title Archon. This is exactly why I have such lovely for this country, and why I wish to remain a nation of which its citizens can be proud. Hear, hear! Another good reason to get to the bottom of the forum's stubbornness, aside from the trifling matter of our impending doom. Excuses while we try to make some headway into these books. Artorias, more commonly, should arrive any moment now. Okay. While we wait for them. Hi Krill, Afana, how was your foray to the library? We returned with our selections. Although I must say, the picking were quite slim indeed. Mistress Krill has already flicked through every history book devoted to the disaster, and more than a few which barely made mention of them. As such, we'll be looking into the research papers of the Umbo calamities as well as articles written by the appointed forum members. Perhaps their knowledge of the final days come from an unexpected source. Speaking of which, might I ask you a few questions related to the final days? I'm the only one here who didn't witness the events of the Amrats firsthand, and fear I might be overlooking critical details. Well, sure, I can explain it to you. My thanks. Now, where to begin? First things first, what kind of phenomenon did the ancient encounter as the final days drew nigh? A complete destabilization of creation magic, primal of a ring power were summoned from the Aether, the worst kind of phenomenon you can imagine. What would I choose? I guess a primal of unwilling power. Primals of unwilling power were summoned from the Aether. I would say that one? Question mark? I believe Hylian and Zerg were summoned after the final days have arrived. Quite deliberately, in fact. If you are speaking of phenomenon caused by the final days, the chaos of creation magic rampart is what first comes to mind. Fear and despair manifest in terrible, tangible fashion. Meteors rain from the sky, fire erupting from the ground, indescribable abominations prowling the streets. The more or less aligned with my understanding, if only the art of creation has survived until the present day, we might have something substantial to analysis. To the best of our knowledge, however, those techniques were not presented or passed on. You still summarize that the closest known magic is that of the summoning ritual promulgated by Scions. Was there aught else of note which heralded the approach of the final days? The entire star was engulfed by a disaster all at once. They say it began by a hearing sound, the land itself. After that, you can answer this one. The entire star was engulfed by a disaster all at once. It says it made the second one. They say it began with a nearing sound from the land itself. Ah, yes, the Amrotis spoke of it, didn't they? We never did hear this sound ourselves, of course, just as we are into the midst of the madness. But it seems that each and every one of the catastrophes was preceded by this ominous noise. Eventually it resounded all across the star, and not even the Amrot was spared. So the ground was crying out, you say, to be considerably to the harbor of doom. It must have been a quite distinctive and probably quite loud. I have to speak with one of the Numeron Numerates, and ask after any book which make mention of such a sound. Last but not least, would you describe how the ancients sought to quell this unprecedented calamity? Which defiant action do they take? They summoned Zodiac. They summoned Hydaelyn. They knocked Dominant out of the sky. Oh god. They summoned Zodiac. Yes, with Idibus serving as his heart, so many gave themselves in sacrifice to bring him into being. We do not know exactly how Zodiac brought salvation to the star, only that his godlike will, where the law of nature set all right. Then once the balance was redressed, the ancient offered up a further sacrifice to kill the ravages of the final days. Lies sprout anew, and it was these fleeting souls they intend to render into Zodiac, a trade that would allow them to resurrect the shades of love once absorbed by the primal. Or might have had Vanat and her fellows not manifest their opposition in the form of Hydaelyn. Thank you, both of you, for the detailed review. I feel much more confident in my understanding of events. With all the freshly in mind, it does make me wonder what the Tepaloni truly mean when they speak of bringing back the final days. We've seen what they're doing with those towers of theirs. It's forcing people to summon primals as a kind of catalyst. Are they attempting to mirror the conditions caused by unstable creations of magics? Or are they simply using the final days as a figure of speech? A convenient metaphor for the scale of destruction they plan to unleash. But it's all just pointless conjecture at this stage. Let's return to our attention to the form, shall we? We should keep an eye for you still, but it's time we begin studying those research papers.